Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome back to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, my name is Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on Twitter, on YouTube, on Truth Social, just about any major platform out there with the exception of Threads and Instagram, where I'm Real Scott McKay. And you can also join us at the Facebook group, which is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. As always, the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. Hope you'll join us there. Lots of free downloads and goodies to be had there. With me today is a new friend of mine. He is a first-time guest. His name is Joe Gatto. He's from Boston, Mass. And he is the author of a book called From Scratch, which you can find at the top of my Amazon influencer queue if you're listening to this show within a few days of its release. He is also the host of a television show and a radio show of the same name, From Scratch. You can find his television show on Pluto and Roku, or listen to his radio show on NPR. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting, kind of a dynamic duo of topics, if you will. We're going to talk about how we as men eat horribly. And come on, guys, you know we do, especially when we're single. And also one of my favorite topics, which is extremely underrepresented on this particular show, mostly because I usually don't have the right guest to talk to about it. Which is cooking for women. We're going to talk about both of those topics today. So with nothing further, Joe Gatto from Boston. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, how are you, Scott? Thanks for having me on. Am I your first chef on the show?
Now, listen, it's been about 370 some episodes, I guess, at this point. I'd have to go way back and go through all the file cards to figure it out, but I think so. Certainly, yes. You're the first television celebrity chef we've had, which is kind of nice.
All right. I like that. Bonus.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is going to be a show where I'm personally taking notes. I'm an open book. I want to learn everything I can for myself because I am totally a foodie. I love to cook with my wife. I loved to cook for my wife when we were dating. Sometimes we cooked together and just had a whole lot of fun doing it. As a matter of fact, in my Match.com profile, I somewhat infamously challenged women to an Iron Chef battle in my kitchen. And I was amazed, Joe, by how many women took me up on it. Women just love awesome. A guy who can cook, right?
Oh, yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah, you got any experience with that?
Yeah, I got a little, that's how I actually snagged my wife. It was like our third date. And if your audience doesn't know me, I'm known for making everything from scratch. So when I say that, I mean, like I hand forge my own knives. I pull water out of the Atlantic, make salt. I make my own charcoal. I break down whole animals, milk cows, make butter and cheese. So I really like to go all the way. So on our third date, my wife had suggested, maybe we could go out to dinner. And I said, why don't you just come over and I'll make dinner? So, I handmade pastas and did a toasted pistachio pesto. Once she ate that, I mean, it was basically cut to 3 kids later.
Dude, I think I would marry you if you made me pistachio pesto.
I get a lot of offers. But I mean, food is a powerful thing. And one of the most powerful things about it is the way it brings people together. And I'm a huge believer that food leaps over everything. Let it be religion, let it be race, let it be culture, let it be even language. Food breaks barriers like nothing else can, because when you share a meal with someone, you're not just sharing something that they're shoving in their pie hole. You're sharing a piece of you. And it's very meaningful and impactful. They call the kitchen the heart of the house, and there's a reason behind that. So cooking for women, cooking for anyone, cooking for any partner is extremely important, I think, for more than just, impressing someone. You're really showing something that's deeper about you. And it really is a map to who you are.
Yeah, 2 things there jump out at me. First of all, you speak about cooking for a woman in very much the same terminology, even the same exact words I use in my book, Cook for Your Date, which I published, darn near 15 years ago now. And it's all about creating a connection. There's a bond between people when they break bread together. This is why business deals are made over dinner. This is why, especially in European countries and indeed many cultures all over the world, having a meal together, even preparing it together, is a sign of friendship, partnership, camaraderie, and it's unmistakable because what you're doing is you're providing each other nourishment, sustenance. And when you have a woman over your house and you cook for her, it's really impressive that a guy can cook, but you're also providing and protecting in a very real way for her as she's there. It's very impressive to a woman. Now,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I heard you say so. And that kind of is a solid segue to the second point I wanted to bring up, which is Chef Joe, man, this is not women's work. Being in the kitchen and cooking isn't something chicks do. You're out there forging your own freaking knives, making your own cookware, making your own sea salt, doing the fishing, doing the hunting, gutting your own fish. You're doing the whole thing from scratch. That's about as manly as it gets. And indeed, a lot of the major world chefs, the Michelin star guys, are men. So this is manly stuff.
To think that a woman should be barefoot and in the kitchen, I don't know if there's more antiquated thinking I've ever heard. If someone ever said that to me, they would definitely I would have to explain to them what it's really about. Anyone can be in the kitchen, but a man being in the kitchen, for me, I love that part of it. And it's gone beyond of that. I enjoy cooking for my family, and I cook every single meal every single day. And I don't slouch. I make, homemade breads to make the sandwiches for lunches when school's on. I do it all. And it's not because I'm showing off. It's because I love it. And my kids love cooking with me. And I have a 5, a 10, and a 13-year-old. And they've cooked with me forever. They've been on my television shows. They come on my radio shows. But sharing that time when we're all together, man, you can order a pizza. I'm sure it'll be good. But when we make our pizzas together here, and I've made the dough a couple days ahead, so we have a 72-hour dough, we're pulling the fresh mozz. We're not just building a meal. You know what I mean, Scott? We're building a memory. And that, when it comes down to, like we were talking about, like when cooking for a woman, right? All of that is wrapped up into a relationship, because a relationship is like cooking, because the key to cooking is balance. A balanced dish is what's delicious. Just like a relationship needs balance. And being in the kitchen and taking care of the shopping and doing that part of it brings balance into a relationship. And it's also really fun to sit down still to this day, almost 20 years later, and serve my wife a meal and have her just blown away. I love that. It keeps the fires burning, man. There is something that has a little sexual part to it, that it's sensuous. And having that kind of skill to show off still keeps me young.
I definitely want to talk about cooking for a woman in a way that is sensual, because I think that is a huge takeaway. But I got to tell you, first of all, man, if you're hammering out 3 squares a day for your family from scratch, I just feel like a slacker. I don't know where I'd find the time. You got to be like one of those efficient guys who can like chop up a carrot like real fast and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can see on my Instagram at Chef Joe Gatto if anyone wants to follow me. We do some crazy. We just did like these rainbow raviolis I did with the kids. Like I get them involved because I think that's where some parents make a mistake, where they're like, oh, all the pressure's on me to cook, all the pressure's on me to shop, all the pressure. Bring the kids, teach the kids, show the kids. My kids come shopping, I send them off into Whole Foods. They come back with the things I need. So they're part of the experience. So they're learning that for when they grow up, right? But then when we get home, they understand because they just help me shop for the ingredients. They understand how dishes are built, why their favorite dish is this, how to make chicken broth, why we're getting bones. Ew, bones, my 5-year-old daughter. But then she loves the ramen that we made.
Oh,
so,
man,
when you make ramen with, you make your own bone broth, and then, we made our own noodles and the whole deal. There's a great picture of it on the Instagram. It's something else. And we make a big batch of the broth. The kids know it's just simmering all day. The house smells awesome. These are things that the kids are going to grow up with. right? And that means something to my wife. One of the things to transition into what you were saying earlier about, cooking for a woman, I find this a lot with guys because I teach big groups. I do big demos in Boston all the time, 40, 50s. I got one coming up on Thursday. It's 150. And one of the things that guys, I think is a real mistake that I hear a lot for all the time I've been doing it, is what guys will do is they'll cook something they like because they know how to cook it and it's good. There's your first mistake because you're not learning anything about her. What do you need? You need to find out what she likes, why she likes it, where those memories come from. Maybe she had a dish in France that she's never had again that you could recreate. Something that's special, that means more than just the dish itself. It should be layered, and you should really dig in and find out. Take a little time. It's just a conversation. Maybe her favorite thing's tomato soup and grilled cheese. Well, maybe you can make the tomato soup, and then you make homemade bread to make the grilled cheese. She'll never forget it. It has meaning. It's beyond just trying to make pasta that you like. It should have the meaning of, as you're building the meal, you're building the relationship.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Joe Gatto. You're spitting so much game right now, I'm having a hard time keeping up. We're going to have to go back in time here about 5 minutes. First of all, let's address the children for a second. Just one snippet there, okay? Kids love to help. They love to take part, and they especially love to do that at an early age. So if you establish that habit when they're like 3 or 4, give them something to do and then validate them for it instead of saying, oh, you did that all wrong, go away, I'll just do it myself. What you are indeed doing is building a love for, well, what this family does, right? We've seen that in just about every dimension of what we do as a family, whether it's traveling, whether it's cooking, whether it's keeping the house in shape, whether it's fixing things that are broken, and yes, even cooking, and certainly BMX racing, because that's what we do around the house. A lot of parents will force their kids into, being a chip off the old block, and then the kid just rebels against it at age 5 and doesn't want to do it and says, nope, 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 I don't like it, and they cry when you take them.
Of course.
If you give the kids a chance to actually warm up to it and form their own opinion and introduce them to something rather than forcing it on them, it's amazing how, what do you know? They're your gene pool after all, and they end up loving it just like you do. Amazing.
Yeah. And it's a great thing to share. And for me, it's meant a lot that, even on my show on BUR, I have a food show where, I'm cooking live on the air and it streams and everything. And I brought my daughter a bunch of times. And they're peppering her with questions. She's 10. They're peppering her with chef questions, and she can hold her own.
Oh, I bet she feels like $1 million.
Right. And after the show, everyone's hugging her. But one of the things is, like you were saying, she loves it. I'm not bringing her on because I'm like, hey, look, my kids can all make pasta from scratch. My kids can pull fresh mozzarella. I'm bringing it on because that's what we do. That's how we share time, and it's wonderful. And at the end of the meal, at the end of the road, we get something that's really delicious as well. And then here's a great example of it, right? Talking about kids and family. We have a place in Tulum in Mexico. So we go down there quite often. And here's one of my favorite things. On Sundays in the center of town, all the taco carts and all the dessert carts are all lined up, right? Like this classic lining of the carts at night, smoke billowing to the air, music pumping through cheap speakers. And here's my 3 kids just walking. My son's talking Spanish, and they're pulling things, they're paying for things and pulling them off the cart and just eating what's there. They're not looking for chicken McNuggets. Oh, yeah. They're not looking for little like macaroni and cheese. They're eating off these carts. That I turned to my wife and I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I meant. And it's beyond that they could just do that. You know what it meant, like deep down to me? They're getting to share in the heritage of these families down there because the food is their heritage. So it's so beyond just something that they like. The scope of it is larger. They'll see it more as they get older. Right now, I just want them to enjoy the taco. But, when you're having a taco in the streets in the middle of Tulum at night, that's heritage. You're sharing in something that's, the tradition is strong, and it's really teaching them that the world is different, and that's good.
Yeah, man. So much for a little snippet on parenthood. That was one hell of an epic snippet. But, it is important. And, so many things come up once again. First of all, if we just sit on our couch and watch the world happen on TV, our kids will not have their minds open to other cultures, other people, anything that's different than what they're used to. My kids are world travelers like yours, and they want to eat Ethiopian food and they want to eat Japanese food, and it isn't just chicken nuggets. So, man, I echo everything you're saying. That's a great word on parenthood. Yeah. The second thing that came up, I want to go all the way back, not only that little bit about parenting, but you were talking about this magical idea of not just making for a woman your favorite dish, but God forbid, listening to her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is there anything better you can do?
Oh, man, we beat that drum on this show all the time. When women say they want a man who listens, a lot of guys get defensive and they bristle and they go, oh, well, she wants me to follow her. She wants me to, be her little puppy and be her simp. That's not what a woman is saying. She doesn't want you to obey her when she says she wants you to listen. She wants you to tune in to what her hopes, dreams, loves, dislikes, passions, etc. are, food allergies, so that you know how to lead and how to provide. I remember a woman came to my house one time for dinner, and she told me she was of Greek heritage. So I said, why don't we make Greek food? And she goes, oh, I haven't actually had real honest-to-goodness Greek food in ages. I go, well, we need to change that. And I made spanakopita's with a phyllo dough and all kinds of stuff, and she was just in heaven. She was like, finally, a guy who paid attention to me.
There you go.
And see, she was very sexy, so she was getting hit up on a lot, and a lot of guys just wanted to get in her pants without much regard for anything else. So when I come along and I'm actually interested in the Greek heritage and thinking to myself, yeah, you know what? Greek food sounds pretty good. Let's do this thing. Oh, man, I basically could have had her eating out of my hand instead of from a plate at that point. Yeah, it's huge what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, you're dead on there, right? Because, I mean, when guys have that misconception that listening makes you a lapdog, that's the kiss of death.
Well, it's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a misinterpretation.
I mean, don't you want someone to listen to you? I mean,
go figure.
I'm a big believer in listening. I mean, my wife is a very powerful woman. She's an entrepreneur. She's always run her own businesses. One of her businesses is helping women entrepreneurs find their strength. So she's very passionate about that. But listening to her and having her, take over sometimes, go for it. I don't want to be in charge all the time. I'm in charge of everything all the time, it seems. If she wants to take the lead, isn't that the whole idea of getting with a partner? Is that you let them lead too? Because they take the slack, then you take the slack. It's the beautiful yin and yang of having a truly deep, committed relationship.
I agree 100% with everything you're saying, but I want to issue a caveat for the guys who are thoroughly confused by this conversation, okay? Yes, women can take the lead in the context of a relationship, but it is always the man who has the overarching provision and protection of that family. Mm. Sometimes women are the better suited partner to take care of something. Sometimes, for example, in my house, Emily is more excited about doing a task or a chore than I am, even though I'm perfectly capable of it. So I don't feel like it's incumbent upon me as some kind of insecure man to wrest that back from her.
Right. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's not that all of a sudden she owns you and she's putting you in your place and saying, well, no, I'm going to be the one who provides and protects around here. It's just sometimes women have great ideas, so we're going to do it. But you're validating that idea. And I mean, deep down as the man of the household, you might have veto power, but you just don't because there's no need for it. It's almost like when you visit the Serengeti and see a pride of lions. There's a male lion just typically laying there being lazy, and the cubs are just ransacking the poor bastard. They're nipping at him. He just shakes a tail at him, and it's not like he's beating the crap out of them and eating them and scarring them up and showing them who's boss. He could do that if he wanted to, but he just knows not to. It's not worth it. It's not even a symbol of leadership on his part in the animal kingdom to behave like that. So since we're apparently a more evolved species,
Sometimes,
why is it so hard for us to understand? Sometimes our kids have the best idea.
Yeah, 1,000%. I listen to my kids all the time. I mean, but I agree with that. I mean, there's only one alpha, and that's good. There should be structure to that.
But that doesn't mean everybody's creativity and their agency is sapped because you're this big man in charge. To me, that's just faux masculinity.
I mean, alpha doesn't mean domineering, right? I mean,
dominant is not domineering. Yep, for sure.
So, I mean, and food plays into that too. It's just like, a kitchen. There has to be one chef. You can't have 10 chefs trying to make one dish. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's talk about the sensuality of cooking for a woman. I wasn't going to let that one go under the bridge without being talked about. I have an idea. I know what you're talking about, but I want you to give me your impression first of what it means to cook for a woman in a way that brings out the sensuality, which is all important, by the way, because when we lead with sensuality, women tend to reciprocate with sexuality.
Yeah. And I mean, and when you're saying cooking with sensuality, I'm sure, for people that means, I have to get some oysters and I have to make all these things that I've seen in the movies.
Again, they're going to get a very objective viewpoint of that.
Of course, because we're inundated with pop culture, and that's what pop culture says. But the sensuality of cooking for a woman is finding out what she really loves. And when you're making something, the sensuality for me, what I believe, and this is going to be different for everybody, right? Just like everything is. But from my point of view, the sensuality is I'm taking something that she cares about, some dish, some memory, and then I'm recrafting that almost by hand. So I'm taking the time to think it through, to care about her, and then I'm taking my hands and I'm building something for her. And not only is it something like a house or something, it's something that she's going to be able to experience, which is the difference of food than it is to something for carpentry or anything like that. She's actually going to put that in her mouth and experience that balance. And she's going to experience something because I can take that memory, and of course it's going to be my interpretation of it, and I might make it a little spicier, a little sweeter, depending on how I'm trying to make her feel. So all of that comes into play. So when you're that in tune with each other and you're sharing something so intimate, I mean, there's just no way it can't be sensual. There's just no way. It's inevitable that you're going to create that. Now, if you just take out a friggin' microwave pizza, shove it in the microwave, and then slap it in front of her and say, good luck, well,
garbage in, garbage out.
There you go. You're going to get exactly what you give.
Yeah, a lot of guys don't understand that simple truth in life as it relates to relating to women either. Let's break down the word sensuality for these guys. Everything you said, of course, is right on the money. Sensuality is relating to the senses. It's no more complicated than that, right? You have 5 senses. Obviously, when you eat something, you taste it. So the more complex, the more flavorful, the better. But that's only 20% of the bargain. And of course, closely related to taste is the olfactory sense of smell, right? I don't think we need a whole lot of explanation for why a kitchen that just has this wonderful aroma of whatever the chef is cooking would be incredibly pleasing and seductive, right? And one of the things that came to mind was the old marketing adage to sell the sizzle, not the steak. Boom. So what does it sound like when you're cooking the meal? Does it sound delicious? Are her ears perked up? Is something sizzling? Do you throw something in the pan and boom, it makes this big flourish of a sound? All of that is part of the sensuality of it. Presentation, of course. I mean, I love how the Japanese focus on this, by the way.
Right.
And certainly the French. But the idea, of course, of throwing that frozen pizza in the microwave, hearing a beep and having this like charred thing thrown on a table for you to slop up is not sensual, or it's sensually a negative experience. The presentation of it, how it looks, even while it's cooking, is amazing. And even the texture of things. Desserts are famously about texture because it's kind of the denouement to your entire dinner. It's the right. Big crescendo. It's the grand finale. And to have that texture of the perfect flan or the perfect, whatever your dessert is something Michelin-starred chefs pay huge attention to. But all of this, of course, goes way over the head of the garden variety dude out here listening to the show, even perhaps while we're eating. I'll tell you what my secret weapon was. Ready? When it comes to the sensual dinner, and it did involve dessert, I did bananas Foster.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Oh, yeah, because it's flaming.
It's very dramatic.
Yes. So we've had this wonderful dinner, and then it's the bananas, and it's the liqueur, and that brown sugar, so it has this sweet, aromatic, intoxicating scent. And then you say, hey, watch this, and you turn off the lights in the kitchen, and then just set it on fire, and the woman will gasp and start giggling.
1,000%. You might want to put a disclaimer on that, just so
you don't blow up your kitchen.
The newbies to the kitchen don't catch fire.
Right.
But, yeah, that
a little goes a long way. Yeah,
that is super. Yeah, that's a great dramatic one because it's impressive and it's fun, and that's another part of it, right? It should be fun because one of the biggest parts of that sensuality there is the conversation that goes on while you're making the meal. I'm a big believer in don't cook everything and just bring out plates to her at the dining room table. I'm a big believer that you sit in the kitchen together and you share these moments and you have this conversation, and things always get deeper when there's a task at hand and you're a little distracted by it. You tend to be a little more open with yourself. And it's also a fun thing to let her watch. And that voyeuristic part of it, of her just watching you chop and create something right in front of her. And that's a really, I think people forget that part's very, very important to share.
Not to be missed there. It demonstrates you have a plan, you're directed, and you're in control, and you know how to handle things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's very, very sexy to women.
Mm-hmm.
When you're done cooking with a woman, sometimes her antenna will be perked up, especially if it's like a first date. And indeed, I had women come over to my house for me to cook dinner for them, Joe, and it was the first time I ever met them. I'd need both hands to count how many times that happened when I was dating. And so they're thinking, okay, now that this guy's cooked for me, he's going to be like every other guy who's taken me out to an expensive dinner, and he's going to start turning into an octopus, and his hands are going to be all over me. I used to always disarm women by saying, okay, let's do the dishes. And they're like, what? Or at least take a walk around the neighborhood, then do the dishes. And they would come and do the dishes with me, and it would almost invariably degenerate into whacking each other on the tail with wooden spoons and a water fight. Well, boom. That's when the first kiss happens, right?
Right.
Yeah. This is magic. It's just magic stuff. And I hope the guys really enjoyed this portion of the conversation. I want to make sure we talk to guys about cooking for themselves too, Chef Gatto, because when men are alone, we tend to say, okay, we're busy. We have better things to do than cook. So they end up eating prepackaged crap. Okay. A lot of the grocery stores nowadays are very good about making simple meals for relatively cheap that you can come home, throw in the oven for 20 minutes and eat well. But guys are still feasting on fast food and macaroni and cheese and just hot dogs and things that aren't going to make them healthy. What are some quick and easy ways the guys listening can, first of all, eat better, and second of all, maybe not be so intimidated by turning the stove on?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important subject. And if your audience doesn't know, for a long time, I was a chef for professional athletes, Red Sox players, Celtics players. So I've been around the health side of it quite a bit and in depth. And that's even a problem that professional athletes struggle with, is these prepackaged meals, too high of sodium content. The easy takes over for the healthy. There's nothing wrong with occasionally having to hit something like that up. I get it, right? People are busy. But what goes in that mouth is really important. So we have to be way more careful of what we're putting in our mouth and start making better choices. A lot of the problems that come in America, everyone knows that health is a huge problem, and it's coming from what we're putting in our mouth: obesity, high blood pressure, all of that. That all creates problems within the health system. It makes for higher payments, all of that. And it all starts at home just by making better choices. And better choices doesn't mean that you have to spend 2 hours a night trying to create some super duper meal. Making better choices means on Sunday doing a whole rack of chicken thighs and roasting them. So we're getting all the fat out, we're roasting them. It's super flavorful, has a spice rub. And instead of using barbecue sauce, we're making an avocado chimichurri. We're making something that's absolutely delicious, that's healthy for you, and it's fueling your body. Instead of constantly doing fried potatoes and things like that, roast vegetables. This is something that my athletes and my clients over the years have found as a super valuable tip. Roasting sweet potatoes, asparagus, green beans, anything that you like, broccoli, carrots, onions, whole heads of garlic, and making a big tray of that. And just once you're done roasting it, 425 for an hour, and stirring it a couple times, you have this big, huge bag of roasted vegetables that you can just use for the week. It's really healthy. It's really delicious, and it will last. So there's your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now you're just thinking Thursday, Friday. Maybe Thursday you just have, who knows, maybe just have a couple burgers, right? And then Friday, do something healthy. So maybe you can have a Saturday that you have a nice cheat day and have beers and whiskey with the boys, eating buffalo wings. That's okay. Again, one of the things I want to stress, that I stress with everything in my business, in my career, is balance, right? When you're eating healthy, the immediate connotation is, I'm not going to eat salad every day. I hate salad. It's not about that, okay? It's about keeping track of what's going. When you're eating these frozen meals, the sodium's through the roof, the fat's through the roof. Sure, they're easy and they might taste good, high in sugar, all of that. They're built to taste good, so you keep going back. But taking the time on a Wednesday night to do a ribeye yourself on a cast iron or on the grill, right, and doing some roasted asparagus with some nice lemon and garlic and having a nice meal, boom. And, that it's not that hard. It's going to take you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right, with the right tips for cooking steak. You're pulling it out of the fridge a half hour, 45 minutes before you're even doing anything to it. It's just sitting there waiting to be cooked. So you can do things right on the spot, or you can do things ahead of time. Build yourself some nice stews, soups, chilies, right?
They're all better the next day anyway.
Exactly. And you don't have to use beef every time. Use some lean turkey, some ground turkey. Everyone's, turkey's terrible. I bet you if I did a chili for someone with turkey, they wouldn't know the difference, because it's about flavor and it's about building flavors. But what people do is they say, that means I can't eat Caesar salad every night. It's not about that. It's about having those balanced meals. Instead of eating chips, you're eating some fruit. Make a little fruit salad, keep it in containers. Making that choice is going to make you live longer. You're going to feel better. You're going to be happier. I know it doesn't seem that way. It seems fun just eating a whole bag of chips. But then the next day you're like, I got to lose some weight. I got to do this, right? So that's my big take on something like that, right? It's either today or one day, right? You either start it today or you're going to say to yourself, I'll do it one day.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Matter of fact, a lot of guys, if they're making a little bit of money, hire someone to come in and cook all day.
Sure.
Week. They do it once a week, pay her $200, pay for the shopping bill, and it's one and done that way. I think that's a great strategy because, indeed, a lot of food not only keeps well, but it tastes better the day after it's made, the stews and the soups, things like that. Guys may be listening to this and they're thinking two things. First of all, this is really complicated. And what I want to tell guys out there is you can skip all the complicated stuff. You don't have to be a graduate of Culinary Institute of America and be after your first Michelin star. You could just cook food that tastes good simply. I mean, the roasted vegetables are literally cut up the vegetables, wash them, douse them in a little olive oil, put them in a tray, one of those glass Pyrex trays.
I put it
on 400.
Sheets.
Yeah, right, exactly. And wait an hour and you're done. It's that easy.
And that's 3 nights, meals, 3 nights.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's good for you. The other thing is I think a lot of guys think this is really expensive. Well, if you start adding up the bills for going to In-N-Out Burger 6 times a week, and add up the cost of, let's say, a shaker of fake parsley leaves versus real parsley, real actual parsley that you can cut up in 30 seconds being 45 cents a bunch at the grocery store, you're going to realize this isn't as expensive as you thought it was. As a matter of fact, you're going to start saving money.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So from my experience, I think men, normal guys like us who aren't trained chefs like you, Joe, run into 3 major pitfalls when we start cooking. First of all, we fail to use fresh ingredients, so our food tastes horrible. We buy those fake dried parsley leaves. We get a bunch of crappy ingredients and try to mesh them together, and it just doesn't taste so good. So men definitely need to use fresh ingredients. Keep that in mind. The second thing I've already alluded to is men make things so complicated. I mean, if we make pasta, my wife used to call this garbage pasta. I have to add everything to it. I have to have Italian sausage, pepperoni, Parmesan, anchovies, artichokes, pasta, and tomatoes. You don't have to do so many ingredients. In many, many dishes, the more elegant the recipe, the fewer the ingredients, the better the thing's going to taste. And again, that lowers the cost and makes it all the more delicious. The third thing that men in particular do, well, I'm going to add a fourth one after all, and that kind of goes with too many ingredients, is we make it too spicy. Too many different kinds of spice, too much heat, too much oregano, over the top. So that's kind of like 2.5, I guess. But the third one, Joe, is we overcook the crap out of everything. I mean, we just boil, cook, bake, fry things into oblivion so they're basically a charred semblance of themselves when we're done. The truth of the matter is this should be less expensive, it should be easier, and it should take less time, and it'll be more delicious. But we as guys can't seem to get those truths I just talked about through our head, can we?
No, I mean, guys, just their ego gets in the way to having taught for so long. I mean, one of the things I see all the time is, you know, the guys, especially I teach a steakhouse class, and it's really about, I mean, I break down whole cows, so I understand how it works from the core. And guys, once I start teaching it, the light dawns on marble head kind of thing that they've been doing it wrong the whole time. And you don't have to be Gordon Ramsay, okay, to make a good meal for yourself. What I'm talking about is...
In fact, I hope you're not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he is a fantastic chef, though.
For sure.
One of the things you can do is look up a meal you've had at a restaurant that you loved, even if you've never cooked it. Find it on YouTube. Make it. Put it into your repertoire. One of the big things that you're talking about is all wrapped up in one thing. Guys, most of them who I meet all through the years who have taken my classes and still keep in touch with me, have watched my show, listen to me, everything else. One of the things that is guys' biggest problem is they have 3 things in their repertoire, and that's it.
Because they can't mess it up.
Right. And it's even if it's not even that good, it's like, this is what I've been making since I was in college. You got to expand. You got to find other things. Dive into other cooking. Make your own tortillas and make tacos for yourself. Super fun, super easy. My kids, all my kids, including my 5-year-old, can make tortillas by themselves on the stove. My 5-year-old, you see videos on my Instagram, up there flipping tortillas. It's super easy. And then you're making some nice healthy tacos for yourself with a nice pico de gallo, no cheese, because cheese, I mean, I'm not a big cheese guy on tacos anyway, but just pulled chicken, or make some nice roasted fish tacos, not deep fried, not San Diego ones, which are delicious, but more over towards like LA, where it's roasted white fish on a tortilla, just with a pico de gallo. We have those like once a week here. You take that white fish, put a nice dry rub on it with like chili, not spicy chili, ancho, cumin, little garlic, little salt, little lime juice. Put it in your fridge for 3 hours, then roast it for about 15 minutes, depending on the thickness, 10 to 15. And all you're doing is making tortillas, and you made picos so easy. Tomato, onion, cilantro, little jalapeno maybe.
Man, you're killing me, Smalls. I'm starving.
Right?
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite dishes in the world. And that's so easy.
You know, I have one little note to add relative to everything you just said as it relates to cooking for women. If you're going to throw out a main dish and a few side dishes and maybe an easy dessert, really you only have to focus on that one main dish and get it right. And the side dishes you can kind of fudge on. You know, you can have a little buttered linguine and take a bag of frozen peas and put some butter on that and put that on the side. As long as you have that one main dish that is made of fewer ingredients, fresher ingredients, and not overcomplicated. And you'll do great. And you'll gain the confidence, and you'll want to do it again and again. when you see how she reacts. Great stuff. Great stuff. I tell you what, Chef Joe Gatto, I want to send these guys to your Instagram, and the easy way for them to do that is just to go to mountaintoppodcast.com/chef, CHEF. And in addition to seeing your 5-year-olds flip tortillas, what else will they encounter when they get on Instagram?
I mean, on Instagram, you'll see my classes. You'll see clips from my podcast. You'll see clips from my TV show. My links to everything I do is on there. You can see my 10-year-old daughter and I making chocolate from scratch, where we actually break down the cacao pod. And there's just a ton of fun food content on there. If you like to cook, or you like to see other people cook, or you like to see cool creative dishes, definitely stop by and definitely say hi when you're there.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming, I hope this is a safe assumption, that your podcast is also called From Scratch?
No, this one actually is called Baking Bad. So what we do, we have on
beautiful
chefs, people from network television. We have a whole bunch of big TV personalities coming on, and they come on, do a half-hour interview, and then we actually take them to the kitchen, and my 2 hosts in LA try to cook their favorite dish with them as I watch and just laugh. So it's absolutely hilarious. It's a super fun podcast, and luckily we make the dish for them. So even when everything goes to shit in the kitchen, it's still a blast. So yeah, it's Baking Bad, which there's a link on my Instagram. But yeah, so stop by and check it out. It's really fun. This was a great podcast. This is really different. I love how you do it here. A lot of discussion and just realness. I love it.
Yeah, well, you know what? These are the topics that matter most to the men listening when it's time to interview a chef who knows his way around the kitchen and does everything from scratch. So kudos to you, man, for bringing the noise with these guys today and really helping us grow not only as, I don't know, junior chefs in the kitchen to some degree, but as men. Because I think, indeed, this is a manly skill. As a matter of fact, I know it is. And I've often referred to cooking for one's date as the nuclear weapon of attraction. And first person, you came here and pretty much mirrored that.
Does that make me Oppenheimer?
Yeah, the Oppenheimer of culinary excellence. Yes. Yes. Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Joe Gatto, for joining us today.
Thanks, Scott. This was a blast.
Yeah, indeed. And guys, I have actually written a book called Cook for Your Date, and I don't ever talk to you guys about it. It is all about how to prepare your place, prepare your kitchen, do the shopping, and get cooking for a woman right the first time. What to do when she gets there, how to conduct the entire evening, and it's chock-a-block with simple, elegant, delicious, sensual recipes for the second half of the book. I'm not going to push it too hard on you. All I'm going to do is put the link for it in the show notes at mountaintoppodcast.com, where you can also check out Joe Gatto's Instagram at mountaintoppodcast.com/chef. I'll link to that there also. And you can also visit our sponsors, Origin and Main, Hero Soap Company, and The Keyport. And when you buy something from any of our fine sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get 10% off. Gentlemen, some of you have not talked to me yet on the phone, Skype, or Zoom about how to get the right woman in your life. Hey, by now you know you resonate with the message here. You know we're bringing all kinds of creative ways to get better with women, a shining example of which you have witnessed right here in this very episode. Hey, it's time. Get on my calendar. Let's talk on the phone for 25 minutes about the kind of woman you want to get in your life and how you're going to attract her. The opportunity to get on my calendar is indeed there for you using the red button at the upper right-hand corner of mountaintoppodcast.com and so much more. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.